Okay, today we're going to be talking about group structure. Basically, when people get together into groups, the group usually has some kind of a structure. There are certain kinds of rules that are written, both written and unwritten rules, as far as how to behave in the group, how you're supposed to act with each other. There are certain cases where people take different roles within the group. One person might be a leader, one person might be a recorder, whatever it happens to be. And but as you'll talk about, the structure of groups is very important. First thing we're going to be talking about are norms. We're talking about what they are and why they're important. Okay. Basically, the norms are kind of like the unwritten rules, the standards of behavior that are expected when you are in a particular group. And different groups, by the way, have different norms, so it's not the same norms for every group. And norms are often based on the culture that you're in. Different cultures have different norms that are reflected in group behavior as well. It allows you to kind of understand how to behave when you're in a particular group. Without norms, you might not know what to do or how to act with other people. So the norms kind of help us. It kind of helps us interact with each other in a more, in an easier way, in a more effective way. Okay, you kind of know what's going to expect. When you say this, you know what to expect. When norms of saying please and thank you, for example, are important in terms of how we get along with other people. Okay? So let's talk about some of the aspects of social norms. First of all, they're descriptive. They describe how most members act, feel, and think. So, for example, if you were to either observe or participate in a group and you kind of just were looking around and seeing what everybody is doing, then you are essentially observing the descriptive norms. So when you walk into a classroom, let's say, and you see everybody sitting at a desk, and they have paper out and they're writing, or if they've got the computer out and they're typing, you kind of know what everybody's going to be doing in this particular circumstance. And descriptive norms essentially are just just basically the standards of what everybody basically does. Consensual norms are pretty much consensual and shared among the group members. Basically, everybody in the group is kind of aware of what the norms are, and they basically agree with them. They basically follow them. Okay. However, sometimes you might have your own personal norm that goes against what the group is doing. And in that case, you might actually violate the norm. You might actually go against what the group is doing. And actually, going against what the group is doing is often a very difficult thing to do. It's called a norm violation. So when you violate a norm, very risky. People are going to be looking at you. People are going to be criticizing you. People are going to be wondering what's wrong with you. When you violate a norm, those are the risks you take. Injunctive norms are norms that define what behaviors are good and what behaviors are bad. Okay? And essentially, when somebody, does something bad in a group, violates, one of these injunctive norms, it is certainly going to, get people's attention, and it is going to be disrupting the harmony of the group when somebody does that. Again, kind of violating a norm when you're doing that. The prescriptive norms essentially tell you what is expected for you to do. So if when you enter into a group activity, you kind of know what's expected of you, what's expected of the group members, and those are the the prescriptive norms that basically tell you what you're supposed to be doing. You have proscriptive norms which tell you what you should not be doing. And again, different groups have different ideas about what should be done, what shouldn't be done. The informal norms realize that norms are often informal. Sometimes they're formal. Sometimes you have those norms, those rules spelled out. Okay? For example, if you ever saw the movie The Cider House Rules, in the cider house they had a list of rules that people who live and work, who live in the cider house and work and pick the apples, what they are supposed to do. And though that list actually represents a list of norms, but oftentimes the norms are informal, so they're not necessarily written on a list, but they're just basically there, and you're aware of them. And again, it's something you also don't want to violate, because again, these are things that people get your attention. You get people's attention when you do that. Norms are often implicit, in that you don't necessarily even realize how they're spelled out. You just kind of follow them automatically. You go into a classroom and everybody's sitting down, you're going to find a chair and sit down too. And you just kind of do it automatically. You don't even think about it. Okay? And that's often the case with many norms. Interesting aspect of norms is that often norms are self-generating. It's not like you start the meeting, okay, here are the norms, and let's go ahead and start our group. No, the group norms evolve over time, and they're generated by the group members themselves often. And sometimes it happens intentionally, and sometimes it just kind of happens on its own without any conscious action taken. People just kind of follow along with each other. They kind of get a feel for what's happening, and they just go along with it. Finally, once those norms are generated, once those norms do develop, they're actually very difficult to change. Once a group develops a certain set of standards that they follow, then it's very difficult to change. Think about this as an example. If you've ever gotten started at a new job, or you're even at a current job and you move to a different unit within your company, you probably find out pretty quickly that the norms there are different in some way from what you've experienced before. There are going to be some differences in terms of their standards and what are the prescriptive and proscriptive norms. What are the injunctive norms? You kind of get a feel for that very quickly when you join a new group. And you might feel that their norms make no sense, and maybe the way you did it in the previous group made more sense. But it's going to be often hard for those norms to change. You have to try to make a suggestion that they change what they do might be difficult to do, because once norms are set, it's pretty hard to change. And again, you'll find out in those kinds of circumstances, often you will kind of, in order to fit in, you will follow along with the norms that you're seeing existing in this particular new group that you're in. Muzaffar Sharif did some classic research. He actually did a number of different studies, but one classic research was in terms of the emergence of norms. And what he did was he used the autokinetic effect to essentially establish this. Participants were asked to look at a dot of light in a dark room and to judge how far the dot of light moved. Now, this really is an optical illusion, because the light actually doesn't move. But when you are in a completely darkened room and there's just a single dot of light and you're looking at it, without any other points of reference, the dot of light appears to move. And that's called the autokinetic effect. As I said, it's an optical illusion. Participants in this study were not aware of that this was an illusion, and they actually believed that the light was moving. Again, when you see it, it looks like the light is moving. But that, again, is just an optical illusion. So what Sharif did, was he put people in a room and he asked them to judge how far the light was moving, and using this technique to try to establish norms. Okay. So the participant might say it moved about 3 inches, but as I said before, it's just a stationary dot. It's not really moving, but to the participant, it appears to move. But now, let's say you have people in a group doing it. And one person says, oh, it looks like 1 inch. The second person says 2 inches. Maybe the third person says something really off the scale, like 7.5 inches. They make their judgments aloud. What eventually happens is you have a norm developing. Because really, in all of these cases, nobody is really sure how far the light is moving. Because again, it's only an optical illusion anyway. So nobody's really positive how much it moved. But they're going to be looking at everybody else. Kind of like that social comparison we've talked about last time. Looking at what everybody else is saying, and they're kind of going to have to, they may adjust their estimates based on what other people are saying. And thus a norm is developing. And as you can see, at first, they differ in terms of how far the light is moving, but then they get closer and closer and closer. They get more and more in agreement. And again, when a group is developing norms, they're kind of agreeing on, what people are saying, doing, feeling, and so on. And that's what happens. That's what happens eventually. That's what happens eventually in Sharif studies, is that their estimates converge. Now, what would happen if Sharif put a confederate in, somebody who knew what the study was about, and purposely made a distance judgment that was way off the scale, way different from the others? Okay. Well, are the real subjects, person B, person C, are they just going to ignore the confederate and say, confederate's out of his or her mind, we're going to make our own estimates? No, what actually happens is that person B and C, they eventually converge with the Confederates' responses. So the responses essentially join up here. So the Confederate gives like a slightly less exaggerated, and eventually the other people, the real subjects, they eventually converge. So they form an estimate that's actually closer to the exaggerated one. And again, this is norm development. Bring in a new person, and guess what? The new person and new subjects, even when the Confederate is gone, the norm stayed the same. So they developed the norm, and remember what I said before, how the norms may be resistant to change? Well, yeah, even when the Confederate left, even when the crazy person left, who gave the exaggerated estimate, even when that person left, the norm stayed high. The norm stayed the same. And again, the new person coming in, adjusts to the norm. And it lasts for many generations. It continues on and on. So, as you can see how the norms start developing, and you can see how the norms remain relatively stable even over time. Norms are important. We will internalize those norms as we grow up in our culture, as we interact with other people, as we become more social with others. We realize the norms that exist around us. We have norms in our families, and we have norms in the other groups that we belong to. And again, we experience discomfort when we see somebody that violates the norm, and we're especially uncomfortable when we violate the norm, when we go against what everybody else is doing. When we even go, or especially an injunctive norm, when we're going against what says, when we're doing something that the norm says is bad. Okay? So if you have a particular group norm against cheating, let's say, and you're caught cheating, you're going to be really ashamed of yourself. And even when you are doing the cheating, you're going to feel ashamed as you're doing it. If those norms are very strong against cheating, then it's really going to make you feel uncomfortable to do that behavior. If you're in a group where everybody cheats and everybody takes shortcuts and it's considered accepted, then you're not going to feel that uncomfortable. You're going to just kind of do what everybody else is doing, and it's going to be a different circumstance there. Norms can be very useful in terms of guiding people to do good behaviors. There could also, unfortunately, guide people to do bad behaviors. So, for example, if you're trying to promote healthy behaviors, let's say, what you'd want to do is you'd want to try to develop norms for healthy behavior, have people associate with others who share those norms, and the people are going to engage in healthy behavior. So trying to create a culture of healthy behaviors is something that you can do to try to create those norms. Unfortunately, if you're in a group or a culture that has norms of liking to eat fried foods and sweets and sugary drinks and stuff like that, then you're going to joining into that group, though you may be following those behaviors and accepting of those behaviors, and kind of an unhealthy norms there. So norms can serve both good and bad purposes here. Interestingly enough, people often have what is called pluralistic ignorance, where they believe they know what the norm is, but really they don't. They privately disagree with the norm, and they think that everybody else agrees with it, but they don't think that other people agree with them. So you think you're the only one. So in other words, you think, oh, okay, everybody here drinks, but I don't like to drink. I think it's wrong. But maybe you're wrong, and maybe there are other people who also don't like to drink, and you're just not aware of that. And that's an example of pluralistic ignorance. So here are some examples of norms that you might see in certain circumstances. One norm might be laptops in classrooms, for example. In some schools, all the kids have laptops, all the students have laptops. In others, nobody has laptops, or in others, maybe a few people do. And maybe the few people who do, maybe they feel out of place when they use them. Alcohol use on campuses, there are different norms regarding that. Some schools are considered what are called party schools. There's a lot of drinking. Would you consider Our Lady of the Lake College to be a college that has a norm of drinking alcohol on campus? Clearly not. We are a commuter campus, and there's certainly no bars on campus. There are no bars anywhere near campus, really. Maybe on Essen Lane, but on campus, surely there really isn't any drinking, as far as I know. And if it is, it certainly violates the norms of the campus. Recycling. You can create norms to promote pro-social behaviors such as recycling. Having the recycling bins readily available all over the place. That is a way to promote recycling. In other words, by doing that, you're creating an environment where those norms develop, where it becomes normal to do this. Okay, realize in the past recycling wasn't normal, but now, for the most part, it's a normal activity to do. I know at home we have the recycling bin, we have the regular garbage bin, and we know what to do to bring it out. And again, these norms can develop over time, and now they've become stable. Different Clearly, there are norms that develop that have to do with developing a thin body. You read magazines, and it's what's people there. You read in magazines, and these thin body norms actually now affect people's body image. Now people want to maybe try to match up with those norms. If they feel that they don't match those norms, they feel bad. They feel as if they're not attractive. And again, so these are the things. And I guess another important norm to think about, these since we are talking about an online class, is netiquette. You've heard the term netiquette. Netiquette refers to the expected behaviors expected of people in an online environment for politeness and whatnot, and for what is appropriate behavior. Facebook has a bunch of these norms, but when you take an online class, you have these norms for what is acceptable behavior online. Don't send any emails with all caps, because that is kind of aggressive hostility when you do that. But that's an example. But these are norms that exist in the online world as well as in the face-to-face world.